Yes, Cookie, I am talking to you even though you're not in Las Vegas because I have mental illness. Oh, hey everybody, it's JL for JL's Book Club, where we don't talk about Fight Club because we didn't read Fight Club. As you can see, we're not in the lovely confines of Bloomfield, New Jersey. We're instead in Las Vegas in a king suite in the Venetian Hotel because last night the girlfriend formerly known as Righteous and I were in the Sphere to watch U2, and the concert was wonderful. For the second straight time seeing a U2 concert in 5 years, I was in a furious, awful mood. And then the majesty and the music of U2 soothed the savage beast, and I enjoyed the shit out of it. So that was wonderful, highly recommend. And for the second straight concert in a row that I've attended, when I choose to sit down, often to help out those less heighted people behind me, I get hit in the head by clapping idiots. At Guns N' Roses, it was 4 times I got hit in the head without an acknowledgement from the Latino family behind me, so I didn't say anything because I want to be an ally. And last night, it was an over-the-top, zealous, goofy white guy who hit me twice in the head. And he would say, "Oh, I'm sorry," but then he gave me like a pat, and I was like, "That's good." And then he would like rub my shoulders, like Buster Bluth, and he'd be like, "Is it?" And I'd go, "Okay, yeah." And at the second time, I was like, "Okay, yeah, get the fuck off me." And I'm not usually one of those like "don't touch me, bro" type dudes, but it was like a pat would have been fine. The shoulder massage, I'm sorry, I'm also drunk and maybe on psychedelics and experiencing the Sphere. I don't want to be part of whatever, HBO real sex swingers orgy for mediocre people you're having after the show. So 6 times I've been hit in the head in the last 2 concerts I've attended, simply for sitting and trying to help my less heighted brethren. So the message is, stand tall, fuck them if they're short. That's the new militant JL concert policy. I'm sorry, but they've made me a monster. Anyway, guys, book club. Sponsored as always by beverages, and this month, as you can see behind me, there's a selection of Fiji beverages which we will not be touching because it's that weight sensitive. We tip it off, we get charged, I don't know, anywhere between $20 and $1,000 per bottle of Fiji water. But they're sponsoring the show this week, so that's it. This month, so that's good. Guys, I promised you 2 Supreme Court books this, and we're doing a handheld thing here in case the righteous camera woman's shoulders get weak. That's why you'll see some slight vibrations. Not good vibrations, Beach Boys, Marky Mark. Funny note, the woman in the Good Vibrations video, a friend of the camera woman. So, needless to say, she has not introduced me to her. Obviously, that level of star power might overwhelm her. She's worked with the worst in Mark Wahlberg, and now she could meet the most underappreciated, me. Anyway, have we even talked about a book yet? We haven't, guys. We only have 1 book. I promised you 2 Supreme Court books, but the reading was a little slower than I thought in LA with the nice weather and the hanging out with friends. So I only got through 1, but it's a doozy, folks. The Shadow Docket by Stephen Vladeck, who's a law professor at the University of Texas, Austin. The Shadow Docket, guys, is something that if you follow the Supreme Court at all or read news stories about the Supreme Court, it's a term that's been popping up with some regularity recently. And it's basically shorthand. It's the way they sort of decide some cases on the merits, but without actually giving it like full hearings or any explanation whatsoever. This book, now I know some of this, I would recommend this to a wide array of people. Not everybody, but obviously, if you're like me, a lawyer who is sort of like, I have a very cursory understanding of the Shadow Docket because I see it in lots of articles and discussed on news programs. Incredible book. Instructive, educational, but really as well written a book on a sort of academic topic as I've ever encountered. So it gives you a full historical explanation while leading up to sort of how the current Supreme Court, this sort of supermajority conservative Supreme Court, has really taken a practice that was already being maybe used excessively and has like abused it to basically further conservative political agendas without actually adhering to sort of legal principles, and has really degraded the Supreme Court. Until this, I knew it was like a talking point, like, oh man, the conservatives suck, they're abusing the Shadow Docket. This lays it out so well. where it's written so well that you still are absorbed in it, but you're really getting a strong grounding in what exactly this is, from its inception, from how it was used in earlier eras of the Supreme Court to what the current Supreme Court is doing. I'm sure some people would be like, oh, it's just a left. No, this is like so clinical. He's clearly writing this almost the way a great lawyer, which he probably is, or at least great legal mind, the way a great lawyer would make the case against this current Supreme Court. The hypocrisy, the way they've really weaponized it, like all the headlines of, oh, when they vote for to get rid of Roe v. Wade or anything, those are the big headlines where you're like, oh, this is horrible. But this really goes into how hypocritical and agenda-driven this current Supreme Court is. It's really, I wasn't sure, it isn't the quickest read, but it's as quick a read as this topic could be. Now, I know some people are hearing this going, I don't know if I want to read this. I recommend this book. It's just, it gives you a thorough, clear, and deeper understanding of just how awful this Supreme Court is, but also how we got here. Whereas, like, yes, you can walk around and say, oh, Roe v. Wade or gun cases, and you understand sort of where the court is, but those pale in comparison to what's going on with the Shadow Docket and the way they're just sort of dismantling sort of the institution of the Supreme Court with these hypocritical judgments where they're not offering any rationale, they're not offering any clarity for lower courts. This may sound like legalese to some people who are, but I'm telling you, any lawyer who wants to know more about this or speak more educatedly, smartly on these issues, a must read. But I really think a layperson, which I practically am, let's be honest, it's not like I'm writing legal briefs in my spare time. It's devastating, and you really see how they're abusing their power to further a conservative political agenda. Like, there are cases where they have had a chance to make real rulings on issues, and the religious liberty chapter is especially instructive. They actually pass on cases where they could make real rulings and have the full, as they call it, plenary discussion, which is like how the cases that we know about get decided through rigorous, long process. They've passed on those to then rule on similar cases in the Shadow Docket where they don't have to explain anything, and you have lower courts going, we genuinely don't even know what they want. And that's because this supermajority of conservatives is really under Trump and with Amy Coney Barrett making just sort of whatever they want politically to happen. And on the Shadow Docket, there's no explanation needed. So I know maybe that sounds too like, I'll pass on this one, JL, but they don't get much better than this at explaining sort of somewhat academic topics in really enlightening terms, readable terms, and where you realize, oh, I thought this current Supreme Court sucked just based on their big decisions. It turns out they actually suck way worse if you examine this. So great book on sort of all levels. So if this interests you at all, I would recommend it. As far as next month, and I don't have a passage because it was sort of hard for me to pick out a specific passage. There was one where Justice Elena Kagan was quoted at length that kind of would have made sense as a passage, but I couldn't find it. But for the most part, this is a book that maybe finding one paragraph or to read to you that encompasses everything was a little difficult. So I'd just say, in its totality, a sort of must read if you care about or are interested in this current legal and Supreme Court climate. It borders on a must read. So highly recommend. For next month, I think the book I'll read is the new biography on Elon Musk. Not guaranteed, but that's probably the one I'm going to review next week. So we have to get back to losing money at the casino and figuring out where we're going to have a nice dinner before heading out to Salt Lake City, Utah. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being Patreon supporters. And remember, books, they're like documentaries for smart people. Sphere!